What's the real reason billionaires get richer faster? Have you ever wondered why billionaires seem to accelerate their wealth as if they're playing a completely different game? Because they are. And today, we're going to talk about the real reason behind this phenomenon. The reason most people never see. Not because it's hidden, but because it requires a shift in the way you think, perceive opportunity, and respond to life. You're about to discover something that might feel uncomfortable at first, but by the end of this video, it will feel empowering. It might even feel like you've finally unlocked a door that's been in front of you your whole life, but you didn't know which key to use. So let's get straight to the point. Billionaires don't get richer faster because they work harder, or because they're luckier, or because they have some magical talent that you don't. No, the real reason is much simpler, and at the same time, far more profound. If you stay with me until the end, you won't just understand why they get richer faster. You'll understand how you can start applying the same mental rules, emotional principles, and energetic alignment that quietly operate behind every massive fortune on the planet. This isn't about copying their lifestyle. It's about adopting the inner architecture that makes exponential wealth possible. Take a breath, lean in. This might be the most important realization you've had about money in years. Topic 1. Billionaires don't think in linear time. They think in exponential time. If you truly want to understand why billionaires get richer faster, you need to slow down for a moment and examine something that most people never think about: the relationship they have with time itself. Because this isn't just about money. This is about perception. It's about the mental lens through which a billionaire evaluates life. Most people live inside a timeline where everything is urgent, everything is immediate, everything is now. They want results now, validation now, comfort now, security now. It's a mindset shaped by survival, not expansion. But billionaires? They don't live on the same timeline. Their minds operate on curves, not straight lines. They think exponentially, not linearly. And that single shift changes everything. Imagine two people planting seeds. One plants for the next season, the other plants for the next century. They're doing the same action, yet the long-term outcomes could not be more different. That's the core distinction between the average thinker and the billionaire thinker. Most people chase small wins because they're afraid of losing time. Billionaires create long-term wins because they understand that time, when leveraged correctly, is not something you lose. It's something that multiplies. Look at Jeff Bezos. In the early days of Amazon, he wasn't trying to build a profitable bookstore. He wasn't thinking about the next 12 months. He was thinking about the next 20 years. While critics demanded immediate profits, he poured money back into infrastructure, technology, and customer obsession. His timeline wasn't the timeline of the world around him, and because of that, he was misunderstood for years. But exponential thinkers are always misunderstood at first. Their vision stretches too far into the future for the present moment to comprehend. Bezos's wealth didn't grow gradually. It erupted, and people acted shocked. But Bezos wasn't shocked. He knew exactly what happens when you treat time as a partner instead of an enemy. This is the profound difference between linear and exponential thinking. Linear thinking says, what I earn is proportional to the hours I work. Exponential thinking says, what I earn is proportional to the systems I create, the assets I build, the networks I scale, and the value I expand, even while I sleep. Linear thinkers ask, what will this give me today? Exponential thinkers ask, what will this become if I nurture it consistently for years? That one question can redirect the entire arc of your life. Consider Warren Buffett. His story alone proves the power of exponential time. More than 90% of his net worth came after he turned 65. Think about that. A man considered one of the greatest financial minds in history and became unimaginably wealthy, not in his early years, but when most people are retiring. Why? Because he understands compounding in a way that goes beyond numbers. He understands the emotional patience required to let compounding work its magic. Patience is not passive. It is a form of mastery. Buffett didn't rush the process. He trusted the curve, and the curve rewarded him with billions upon billions of dollars. But exponential thinking isn't just about money. It is about identity. People who operate exponentially see themselves as builders, not earners. They see themselves as creators, not employees of time. They understand that one inspired action, one aligned decision, one powerful idea can snowball into results so massive that the average person won't believe it until it's too late. They study emerging trends, not current ones. They spot waves before they form. They align their skills and energy with where the world is moving, not where it has been. And because they position themselves in front of the future, wealth naturally accelerates toward them. Look at Elon Musk. Whether someone likes him or not is irrelevant to this point. What matters is his relationship with time and scale. He doesn't build companies, he builds ecosystems. Tesla isn't just about cars, it's about global energy transformation. SpaceX isn't just about rockets, it's about the infrastructure for humanity's next frontier. Neuralink isn't just a device, it's a bet on human potential merging with technology. Musk's thinking is rooted in the long arc of civilization. When you operate on that scale, wealth doesn't grow linearly. It explodes. But that explosion only happens because the seeds were planted years before the world was ready to understand them. And this is exactly why the average person struggles to build wealth. Not because they aren't talented, not because they aren't intelligent, but because their thinking is confined to the present moment. They analyze opportunities through the lens of today's limitations instead of tomorrow's possibilities. They want assurance before action. They want guarantees before risk. They want certainty before commitment. But exponential growth doesn't respond to certainty. It responds to courage, consistency, and the willingness to hold a vision long enough for it to manifest. Billionaires don't chase money. They chase momentum. They trust that if they align with the future, money will follow. And they're right. Because wealth always flows to those who understand time better than those around them. Every major fortune in history is tied to someone who was willing to think beyond the immediate horizon. Someone who could see the invisible curve of potential rising long before anyone else believed it was possible. When you start thinking exponentially, something shifts. You stop panicking about the small delays and start focusing on the bigger trajectory. You stop asking why something isn't working today and start understanding how it will evolve if you remain disciplined, curious, and committed. You begin to see your life as a series of strategic seeds instead of disconnected struggles. You start realizing that your future wealth is already forming, not in your bank account, but in your mindset. And suddenly, you begin to understand the truth. The speed at which you grow wealth is directly tied to the timeline you choose to operate from. Billionaires operate from the timeline of inevitability. They make decisions today that will pay them for decades. They invest in ideas with the patience to outlive criticism. They trust that time is not something to race against, but something to collaborate with. And when you collaborate with time, time multiplies everything you touch. This is the heart of exponential thinking. This is why billionaires get richer faster. And this is the mindset that, once integrated into your life, begins to change everything. Slowly at first, and then suddenly, overwhelmingly, undeniably. Topic 2. They build systems that make money independently of their time. If there is one truth that separates billionaires from everyone else, it is this: they refuse to be the source of their own income. They build systems, engines, environments, and ecosystems that continue producing wealth even when they're asleep, disconnected, traveling, or focusing on new ideas. And this might sound almost mystical at first, as if they discovered some hidden portal to infinite abundance. But the truth is far more rational and far more accessible than people imagine. Billionaires understand something most people overlook entirely. Your time has a ceiling, but systems do not. And as long as your income depends on your personal effort, your earning potential will always be limited. Most people operate in a transactional relationship with money. They exchange hours, skills, energy, and emotional labor for income that stops the moment they stop. It is a fragile system, one that traps people in cycles of stress, burnout, and stagnation. Billionaires saw this problem long before they became wealthy, and instead of accepting it as an unavoidable part of life, they decided to solve it. They decided to elevate themselves from being workers inside a system to becoming architects of the system itself. And that one decision creates an entirely different financial destiny. Think about how wealth is typically created. The average person tries to save, budget, and work harder. They try to climb salaries and negotiate raises. They try to squeeze more effort out of every hour. But billionaires are not interested in adding more hours. They are interested in adding more outputs per hour. infinitely more. They aim to create structures where 1 hour of work today can generate thousands of hours of output in the future. This is the very essence of scalability, and it is why wealth accelerates so quickly once a system is functioning. A well-built system doesn't just make money, it multiplies money. Take the example of Bill Gates. He didn't become one of the richest men in the world because he sold software manually, one copy at a time. He created a system, a platform, a product, and a licensing structure that allowed Microsoft Windows to spread across the entire world without Gates personally being present in every transaction. The system did the work, the system scaled, the system multiplied, and because the system didn't depend on his daily hours, the income it generated expanded at a pace no individual could ever match. This is why systems-based wealth feels exponential, because it is. But the brilliance of billionaires goes deeper than simply creating a system. They build systems that are designed to adapt, evolve, and respond to the changing world. They create self-correcting mechanisms, hire expertise, delegate operations, and install processes that allow the system to survive without their constant involvement. They build structures that outgrow them, outlast them, and outperform them. They become the visionary, not the worker. They become the mind, not the muscle. They become the strategist, not the executor. Think about Steve Jobs. Apple is not just a company, it is a machine. A beautifully engineered ecosystem of hardware, software, branding, user experience, and emotional design. The brilliance of Apple isn't in its products alone. It is in the interlocking nature of those products, the seamless integration that ensures once you buy one Apple device, you are naturally pulled into the entire ecosystem. That is a system. It creates loyalty, retention, repeated purchases, and deep emotional attachment, all without Jobs having to personally convince each customer. The system sells itself, the system multiplies itself, and that is why Apple became one of the most valuable companies on Earth. Even in the world of investing, billionaires don't pick random stocks hoping for luck. They build systems of capital. They create portfolios, networks, advisory teams, research algorithms, and financial structures that allow their money to continuously generate more money. Their wealth is not a collection of isolated decisions. It is a coordinated system in motion. You can see this in Ray Dalio's principles-based investment approach or in Warren Buffett's acquisition strategy through Berkshire Hathaway. These structures are so refined that even when the market drops, the system knows how to respond and recover. Systems create resilience. Systems create endurance. Systems create acceleration. But perhaps the most important aspect of billionaire systems is this: they are built on leverage. Not leverage in the sense of risky loans or dangerous bets, but leverage in the sense of amplifying effort. Billionaires use leverage through technology, people, automation, distribution, intellectual property, capital, branding, and network effects. They understand that one person alone cannot scale infinitely, but a system can. They also understand that time, when paired with leverage, becomes a force of compounding unlike anything else. This means that the real question isn't, how do I make more money? The real question is, how do I build something that continues to make money without needing me? This is the psychological doorway through which billionaires walk early in their lives. They seek to become unnecessary to their income. They aim to remove themselves from the center of their financial creation, not because they are lazy or disconnected, but because they understand that true wealth is born from independence. Independence from time, from labor, from exhaustion, and from personal limitation. This is why you often hear the phrase, "the rich get richer." It isn't because they have some unfair advantage. It is because they built something that amplifies itself silently, consistently, and relentlessly. Systems don't take breaks. Systems don't get sick. Systems don't doubt themselves. Systems don't procrastinate. Systems don't lose motivation. Systems don't negotiate their own limitations. Systems simply do the job they were designed to do. And when a billionaire creates a system aligned with a growing market, a rising trend, or a societal need, the system becomes unstoppable. And here's the part that many people overlook. Systems can be built at any level. You don't need to be a billionaire to start building one. You can create a small digital product that sells automatically. You can build a YouTube channel that earns revenue even when you're resting. You can invest in assets that grow without your intervention. You can learn skills that multiply instead of skills that merely maintain. The moment you stop thinking like a worker and start thinking like a builder, you step into the psychological world billionaires live in. Once you cross that threshold, everything in your life begins to change. You stop tying your self-worth to your output. You stop measuring your success by hours. You stop sacrificing your peace for productivity. You begin designing structures that grow while you grow, and eventually they grow even when you're not actively involved. This is how billionaires accelerate wealth. Not through luck, not through superhuman talent, but through systems. Systems that transform effort into momentum, momentum into scale, and scale into a fortune that expands faster than anyone expects. This is the truth behind their accelerated wealth. They build money machines instead of chasing money moments. And once you understand this, once you apply this, once you internalize this, your relationship with wealth will never be the same. Topic 3. They leverage other people's genius instead of relying on their own. There is a moment in every billionaire's journey when they realize something crucial. Their personal intelligence, no matter how extraordinary, will never be enough to create the level of wealth and impact they envision. And this realization is not a weakness. It's the beginning of true power. Because wealth, especially wealth that grows exponentially, is never the result of one person's effort. It is the result of a network of minds, talents, strengths, and ideas converging toward a shared vision. Billionaires understand that to build something bigger than themselves, they must involve people who are better than themselves in specific areas. And instead of being intimidated by that, they welcome it. They seek it. They build around it. Most people operate under an invisible limitation, the belief that they need to be the smartest person in the room to succeed. But billionaires know the opposite is true. They intentionally place themselves in rooms where they are not the smartest, not the most capable, not the expert on every topic. Why? Because they want to expand their capacity beyond what is possible alone. They want to surround themselves with brilliance, not compete with it. They aren't threatened by talent. They are energized by it. And it is this maturity that allows them to multiply their results instead of exhausting themselves trying to do it all. If you look closely at every major wealth empire, you will find this pattern repeated. Steve Jobs had incredible vision, but he also knew he needed engineers, designers, marketers, and innovators whose genius complemented his own. Apple would not exist without the collective intelligence behind it. Jobs wasn't writing code. He wasn't building circuits. He wasn't packing boxes. He channeled the genius of others into a unified masterpiece. He understood that genius becomes exponentially more powerful when it is orchestrated rather than isolated. The same is true with Elon Musk. Despite being seen as a polymath, he is surrounded by teams of scientists, engineers, software architects, and strategic thinkers whose expertise shapes the foundation of his companies. Musk doesn't build rockets by himself. He doesn't sit at a desk designing every battery for Tesla. What he does is far more valuable. He aligns minds, fuels innovation, sets direction, and inspires people to push beyond what they previously believed possible. He leverages collective genius to achieve goals no individual could accomplish alone. If you examine Jeff Bezos' leadership principles, you will discover an obsession with talent density. Amazon grew not because Bezos knew everything, but because he recruited people who could see blind spots he couldn't see, optimize processes he couldn't optimize, and make decisions faster than he could make them. This is the billionaire mindset in action. Recruit brilliance, trust brilliance, empower brilliance. Billionaires do not fear someone else's intelligence. They fear not having enough intelligence in the room to achieve their vision. And yet, the average person rarely operates this way. Many hold on to tasks, responsibilities, and decisions because they want control, or because they fear delegating, or because they think no one can do it as well as they can. But this is a trap, a dangerous trap, because when you rely solely on your own effort, your growth becomes limited by your personal capacity. Your time becomes the bottleneck. Your energy becomes the bottleneck. Your knowledge becomes the bottleneck. Billionaires remove the bottleneck by removing themselves from the center of the operation. Instead of being the engine, they become the architect. Instead of being the worker, they become the conductor. This shift begins internally. It begins with the belief that collaboration is not a threat to your success. It is the gateway to your next level. When you open yourself to the wisdom of others, when you allow people to bring their strengths where you are weak, when you trust talent to expand your vision, you tap into a flow of abundance, that simply cannot exist when you try to do everything alone. Billionaires learned early that greatness is not built in isolation. It is built through connection, synergy, and the courage to let others shine. Think about Oprah Winfrey. While she is an undeniable force of talent and charisma, her empire is not a solo act. Oprah's success is deeply connected to her ability to partner with producers, writers, executives, and creatives who amplify her message. She expanded her brand through teams who shared her passion and brought their own brilliance to the table. Oprah's wealth didn't grow because she did everything alone. It grew because she knew when to lead and when to lean on others. This willingness to leverage other people's genius is also tied to emotional intelligence. Billionaires know how to inspire, collaborate, communicate, and build environments where people feel empowered to contribute. They understand that a brilliant mind shuts down in a toxic environment and thrives in a supportive one. So they build cultures where innovation is celebrated, mistakes are part of the process, and ideas are valued regardless of hierarchy. This culture becomes another multiplier, because empowered teams create exponential outcomes. But here's the deeper truth. Billionaires also understand their own limitations. They are brutally honest about what they're not good at. They don't pretend to be experts in everything. They don't waste time trying to master skills that someone else could execute 10 times better. They delegate not because they are above the task, but because they value their energy. They understand that their genius lies in vision, direction, and decision-making, not in micromanaging every detail of the journey. This humility, combined with strategic intelligence, creates the ultimate formula for wealth acceleration. When you take one person's strengths and multiply them by dozens or hundreds of other people's strengths, you create a force of momentum that becomes unstoppable. No single individual could ever compete with that. This is why wealth built through a team grows exponentially, while wealth built alone grows linearly. Billionaires build teams that operate like living systems, responsive, intelligent, adaptive, and scalable. And here's where your own transformation begins. Once you understand that you do not have to be the source of all solutions, once you embrace collaboration instead of competition, once you see talent as an investment rather than a threat, you begin stepping into the mindset that makes exponential wealth possible. You start attracting people who align with your mission. You start building relationships that elevate your vision. You start creating value far beyond what you could ever create alone. This is the truth behind billionaire success. They leverage other people's genius to accelerate their own. And when you begin to do the same, no matter your current level, you shift into a new realm of possibility, where wealth flows more naturally, growth happens more quickly, and your dreams expand into realities that once felt out of reach. Topic 4. They see opportunity before the world notices it exists. If there is one superpower billionaires seem to possess, it is the ability to recognize opportunity long before the rest of the world catches on. This is not luck, and it's not some mystical ability reserved for a chosen few. It is a cultivated way of seeing the world, a trained perception, a refined sensitivity to shifts, patterns, and possibilities that most people overlook. Billionaires don't wait for society to validate an idea before they act. They move when the idea is still a whisper, still a seed, still invisible to everyone else. And this ability to identify what is coming, not what is already here, is one of the core reasons they become richer faster. Most people are reactive. They invest when everyone else is investing. They chase trends after they have already peaked. They discover opportunities only when they are too mature to offer outsized returns. But billionaires are proactive. They sense the direction of energy. They observe human behavior. They pay attention to global shifts, emerging needs, untapped markets, and technological evolution. Where others see risk, they see potential. Where others see uncertainty, they see a doorway. Where others see nothing at all, they see the outline of something extraordinary waiting to be shaped. Consider the story of Netflix. When Reed Hastings realized that the future of media consumption would not be in DVDs or cable television but in digital streaming, long before streaming was even technically feasible at scale, he positioned Netflix ahead of the wave. People doubted him. Industry leaders mocked the idea. Blockbuster laughed. But Hastings wasn't looking at the present. He was looking at the trajectory of technological evolution. He wasn't reacting to the world. He was anticipating where the world was going. And that shift in perspective turned Netflix into a global empire while Blockbuster collapsed into irrelevance. This is the essence of billionaire vision. The world sees what is. They see what will be. Look at Elon Musk and the rise of electric vehicles. When Tesla began, electric cars were seen as impractical, unattractive, slow, and undesirable. Governments weren't supporting them, consumers weren't demanding them, and car companies weren't investing in them. The logical conclusion for the average thinker was, this will never work. But Musk wasn't looking at the present state of the auto industry. He was looking at future energy trends, the direction of climate policy, battery advancements, and the growing desire for sustainable solutions. He saw a future the world had not yet awakened to, and he built toward it. Today, Tesla isn't just a car company. It is a symbol of an inevitable future that most people failed to anticipate. This is not accidental. Billionaires develop a habit of constantly asking themselves the same question. What is the world going to need next? Not what it needs now, not what it needed yesterday, but what it will inevitably need tomorrow. This question opens their minds to opportunities hidden behind everyday reality. They observe problems not as obstacles, but as signals. Every inefficiency, every frustration, every technological limitation becomes a clue, a breadcrumb pointing toward future value. And when they follow those clues with consistency and curiosity, they discover opportunities that others overlook. You can see this in the early days of Airbnb, when Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia struggled to pay rent and came up with the idea of renting out an air mattress in their apartment. People thought it was absurd. Who would let strangers into their home? Who would trust a platform built by two broke designers? But they weren't solving a problem of the present. They were tuning into a global shift toward connection, community, shared resources, and decentralized experiences. They were aligning with a change in human behavior long before it manifested at scale. Today, Airbnb is worth billions because its founders acted before the world understood what was happening. This ability to see ahead is not mystical intuition. It is awareness. It is the willingness to notice patterns and question assumptions. Billionaires study industries not just for what they are, but for what they could become. They observe how people behave and ask why. They identify needs people don't yet know they have. They recognize discomfort as an early sign of evolution. They trust their curiosity instead of suppressing it. They are brave enough to act on an idea when it still feels incomplete, imperfect, unproven. And they understand that the biggest opportunities come to those who move before the crowd, not after. What makes this mindset so powerful is that it creates a compounding effect on wealth. When you enter a trend early, you position yourself for exponential returns as the world catches up. When you invest before the masses, you capture the upward wave rather than the plateau. When you create something new before demand peaks, you shape the market instead of competing within it. Billionaires don't just see opportunity, they create ecosystems around that opportunity so that when the world finally notices, they are already miles ahead. This early mover perspective also requires emotional resilience. Acting before the world understands your vision means you will face doubt, criticism, misunderstanding, and skepticism. People resist new ideas. They cling to familiar patterns. They distrust anything that challenges their comfort zone. Billionaires don't internalize this resistance. They expect it. They interpret criticism as proof that they are early, not wrong. They use skepticism as confirmation that they're on the right path. Their commitment to what they see does not depend on validation. It depends on alignment with their inner clarity. And this clarity is not a sudden revelation. It is built through constant mental discipline. Billionaires read voraciously, not to memorize facts but to detect patterns. They travel and expose themselves to different cultures, not for tourism but for perspective. They observe how technology interacts with psychology. They explore how industries intersect with human behavior. They develop a panoramic view of the world, while most people see only what is directly in front of them. They train their minds to sense shifts before they surface. This habit can be learned. You can begin to ask yourself the same questions. You can train your perception to look beyond the obvious, to explore the edges of possibility, to study emerging technology, shifting demographics, global crises, and cultural changes. You can start seeing life as a moving river of potential instead of a static landscape. You can open your mind to the truth that opportunity is always present, but it is invisible to those who only look at the present moment. When you begin thinking like this, something extraordinary happens. You stop chasing opportunities and start attracting them. You start noticing connections you previously ignored. You begin to sense where the world is heading, and your decisions become more aligned, more strategic, and more powerful. This is what billionaires have mastered. They see the invisible. They trust the unseen. They move before the moment arrives, and that is why their wealth grows faster. They are positioned where the future is going, not where the present is stuck. They stand at the doorway before it opens. They plant the seed before anyone else believes the tree will grow. And when the world finally sees the opportunity, the billionaire has already built a forest. Topic 5. They master the psychology of risk while others run from it. If there is one psychological distinction that separates billionaires from the rest of the world, it is their relationship with risk. Not just financial risk, but emotional risk, psychological risk, reputational risk, and the uncomfortable unknowns that intimidate most people into staying small. Billionaires don't simply tolerate risk, they understand it, manage it, measure it, transform it, and use it as a strategic advantage. Where most people see danger, billionaires see possibility. Where most people feel fear, billionaires feel curiosity. Where most people retreat, billionaires lean in. And this subtle yet profound difference in psychological orientation toward uncertainty is one of the primary reasons they grow wealth faster than everyone else. Risk is a powerful concept because it reveals a person's internal limits. The average individual associates risk with loss, pain, failure, embarrassment, rejection, or humiliation. These emotional consequences feel threatening, so they avoid decisions that might lead to them. And because they avoid risk, they also avoid growth. They avoid opportunity. They avoid innovation. They avoid the very experiences that could elevate their income, expand their abilities, and increase their influence. Risk aversion keeps them safe, but it also keeps them stuck. Billionaires learned early that avoiding risk is the riskiest behavior of all. They understand that nothing extraordinary happens in the territory of comfort. They know that the biggest opportunities hide behind fear. Their success is not because they are fearless, but because they interpret fear differently. Fear to them is data. It is a signal. It is a doorway into potential. Instead of shutting down when fear appears, they ask themselves, what is this fear protecting me from seeing? This question transforms fear from an enemy into a compass, and that compass leads them straight toward opportunities others will never access. Take the example of Larry Page and Sergey Brin when they launched Google. At the time, search engines were clunky, inefficient, and treated as a technological inconvenience rather than a billion-dollar opportunity. Every expert said that building a better search engine was a waste of time because no one would pay for it. But Page and Brin saw potential hidden behind the noise. They saw that information was becoming the new currency, and whoever organized information best would shape the future. Their decision was extremely risky. They had no guarantee of success, no validation from the market, and no certainty that their idea would work. But they followed the risk. They trusted their intuition. They leaned into uncertainty rather than running from it. And today, their willingness to embrace risk created one of the most powerful companies in human history. The same psychological pattern appears with every major entrepreneurial breakthrough. When Howard Schultz proposed the idea of turning Starbucks into a European-style coffee culture experience, he faced heavy criticism. Investors told him it was too risky. Americans wouldn't pay premium prices for coffee. The business model was uncertain, but Schultz felt a deeper pull, a clarity that the risk was not a threat but an invitation. He saw the potential before others saw the problem. He embraced the uncertainty because he understood that the reward for taking an aligned risk is far greater than the comfort of avoiding one. Starbucks became a global phenomenon, not because the idea was perfect, but because Schultz had the emotional capacity to step into the unknown. Even in the world of investing, billionaires treat risk differently. Warren Buffett famously says that risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. In other words, risk is not inherently dangerous. Ignorance is. Buffett reduces risk through understanding, study, analysis, and discipline. He doesn't gamble blindly. He takes calculated risks rooted in deep knowledge. This mindset turns risk into a strategic advantage rather than a threat. Buffett's fortune was built not on reckless bets, but on thoughtful risk management that allowed him to seize opportunities others feared. Yet perhaps the most interesting aspect of billionaire risk psychology is their emotional resilience. When the average person thinks about risk, they imagine the worst-case scenario and emotionally collapse before anything even happens. Billionaires imagine the worst-case scenario and then calmly ask themselves, "Can I recover from this?" Their internal answer is almost always yes. And because they trust their ability to recover, they no longer fear loss. Without the fear of loss, the mind opens. Creativity opens. Decision-making becomes strategic rather than defensive. Risk becomes a landscape to navigate rather than a cliff to avoid. This emotional resilience also creates a powerful feedback loop. The more risks they take, the more experience they gain. The more experience they gain, the more clarity they develop. The more clarity they develop, the more intelligent their decisions become. And the more intelligent their decisions become, the greater the rewards they receive. This is why billionaire wealth accelerates. It's not because they gamble recklessly. It's because they refine their relationship with risk until it becomes a tool instead of a torment. You can see this clearly when examining the early days of Amazon. Jeff Bezos left a stable, prestigious job on Wall Street to start a company selling books online, a concept that seemed insane at the time. He made a decision guided by what he called the regret minimization framework, asking himself whether he would regret not taking the risk when he looked back at his life decades later. The answer was yes, and that inner clarity overpowered the outer uncertainty. Bezos took the risk. He accepted the possibility of failure. He embraced the discomfort of the unknown. And that decision, anchored in emotional courage, opened the gateway to a fortune so large that it reshaped global commerce. What most people misunderstand is that billionaires don't take risk for the thrill. They take risk because they understand its purpose. Risk is the bridge between the life you have and the life you want. Risk is the filter that separates those who dream from those who act. Risk is the mechanism through which the universe rewards boldness. Playing it safe may protect you from failure, but it also protects you from success. And here is where your personal shift begins. When you start redefining risk, not as something that threatens your stability, but as something that expands your capacity, your entire relationship with opportunity changes. You begin to see that the discomfort you feel before making a big decision is not a punishment, but a sign that you are entering new territory. You begin to trust that growth requires uncertainty. You begin to understand that safety is not the absence of risk, but the mastery of risk. Billionaires didn't get where they are because they avoided risk. They got there because they understood it deeply, mastered it emotionally, and used it as a catalyst for extraordinary achievement. And when you begin adopting this same psychological framework, your life shifts from limitation to possibility, from stagnation to momentum, from fear to expansion. Risk stops being something to avoid and becomes something to navigate with intelligence, intuition, and courage. And in that moment, you step into the mindset that accelerates wealth, not gradually, but exponentially. Topic 6. They treat money as a tool for expansion, not as a reward for effort. One of the most misunderstood aspects of billionaire wealth is their relationship with money itself. To the average person, money is something you earn after you work hard. It is a reward, a trophy, a symbol of effort exchanged for value. You do the work, you receive the payment, and then you use that payment to survive or to indulge in comfort. But billionaires do not see money as a reward. They don't see it as the end of a process. They see it as the beginning. To them, money is not a finish line. It is a tool, a resource, a seed, a multiplier. It is something to be put to work, not something to sit in a bank account or be spent impulsively on status. Most people grow up hearing that you must work hard to earn money. And while hard work has its place, this belief creates a dangerous psychological limitation. It ties your income to your labor. It teaches you that money is something outside of your control, something dependent on effort, something you must trade your life for. But billionaires understand a different truth. Money is not a product of effort. Money is a product of strategy, alignment, leverage, systems, and insight. Effort alone does not create wealth. Many hardworking people never become wealthy because they treat money as a reward instead of a resource. When billionaires receive money, Whether through investments, business profits, or opportunities, they immediately ask themselves one question: how can this money expand? That single question changes everything. It reframes money from something to be consumed into something to be deployed. It shifts the mindset from spending to multiplying, from celebrating to strategizing, from gratification to growth. And this is why their wealth accelerates. Billionaires recycle their money back into the system that created it. They fuel the engine rather than draining it. Take the example of Warren Buffett, a man whose entire life is a testament to the philosophy of expansion. Buffett has never been fascinated by luxury or status. He lives in the same modest home he purchased decades ago, not because he can't afford something more extravagant, but because he does not see money as something to be displayed. He sees it as something to be cultivated. Instead of spending his wealth, he reinvests it. He pours it back into assets that grow, evolve, and compound over time. His wealth is not the result of earning more. It is the result of reinvesting more. Money expands when you treat it as a tool instead of a trophy. Consider Jeff Bezos. When Amazon finally became profitable, Bezos did not reward himself with lavish spending sprees. He reinvested almost everything back into infrastructure, technology, warehouses, logistics, and new initiatives. Critics wondered why he wasn't taking profits. They didn't understand that Bezos wasn't interested in short-term gratification. He was interested in long-term expansion. Every dollar the company earned became fuel for exponential growth. And because of this mindset, Amazon grew at a rate almost unimaginable to traditional businesses. Bezos did not treat money as a reward. He treated it as a catalyst. Even Elon Musk follows this philosophy with striking devotion. Multiple times throughout his career, Musk risked his entire net worth to fund his companies. After selling PayPal, he reinvested nearly all of the capital into Tesla, SpaceX, and SolarCity. He has described moments where he was nearly broke, choosing to put money back into his vision rather than into personal security. This is not recklessness, it is clarity. Musk treats money as a vehicle for creation. To him, money exists to bring ideas into reality. This attitude is one of the most powerful contributors to his exponential success. While most people cling to their money out of fear, Musk releases it into expansion. And this is where the average person experiences a fundamental limitation. When they receive money, their first instinct is to spend it, to upgrade their lifestyle, buy comfort, increase consumption, or reward themselves for the hard work they've done. There is nothing wrong with enjoying life, but when money is spent faster than it is invested, wealth cannot grow. The mindset of consumption is the enemy of expansion. The moment money leaves your hands without creating more value, its power dissolves. Billionaires have mastered the discipline of delayed gratification because they understand the compounding force of reinvestment. They know that $1 spent is gone forever, but $1 invested continues to work indefinitely. They know that capital becomes more powerful over time, not through stagnation, but through circulation. Billionaires don't let money sleep. They don't let it sit idle. They put it into motion, into projects, into equity, into innovation, into systems that multiply it far beyond the original amount. Another crucial aspect of this mindset is emotional neutrality toward money. Billionaires do not attach their identity to money. Because they do not see it as a reward, they also do not see it as something that defines their worth. This detachment allows them to make strategic, rational decisions rather than emotional ones. When money is a tool, fear disappears. Scarcity disappears. Attachment disappears. The mind becomes clearer. Opportunities become more visible. Decisions become more intelligent. This is why billionaires can risk large amounts of capital. They are not emotionally dependent on the outcome. They understand the game is long, and the results are cumulative. This philosophy also opens the door to more meaningful wealth creation. When money is treated as a tool, it becomes aligned with purpose. Billionaires deploy money into ventures that solve real problems, create real value, and impact millions of lives. They focus on scalability not for ego, but because expansion creates opportunity for everyone involved: employees, customers, shareholders, and society as a whole. When money becomes a tool for expansion, wealth becomes a byproduct of impact. You can see this clearly in companies like Google, Apple, Tesla, Meta, Amazon, Starbucks, and countless other giant enterprises. These companies were built not by people chasing money, but by people reinvesting money into innovation, experience, growth, and vision. Money was the fuel, not the finish line. And the fuel created engines powerful enough to reshape industries. This shift in perspective is transformative for anyone who embraces it. When you begin treating money as a tool rather than a reward, your financial life changes. You become more intentional. You become more strategic. You begin thinking in terms of multiplication rather than consumption. You start asking yourself questions like, how can this money create more value? How can this money create more money? How can this money build something that grows over time? These questions activate the wealth mindset. They shift your identity from consumer to creator, from spender to investor, from worker to architect. This is the mindset that allows wealth to grow naturally, steadily, and exponentially. And once you adopt it, you begin to understand why billionaires expand their wealth so rapidly. They don't cling to money. They don't idolize money. They use money intentionally, strategically, powerfully. And because they use it well, it continues to grow. Topic 7. They build unshakable emotional discipline and make decisions from clarity, not chaos. If there is a single invisible force that secretly determines the speed at which wealth grows, it is emotional discipline. Billionaires might operate in the world of strategy, innovation, technology, vision, and numbers, but beneath all of that lies a deeper foundation: the ability to remain clear, calm, focused, and rational when most people collapse into fear, confusion, anxiety, and emotional reactivity. Wealth creation is not simply an intellectual game, it is an emotional one. And the faster a person can stabilize their inner world, the faster they can expand their outer world. Billionaires are not just financially sophisticated, they are emotionally fortified. Most people underestimate just how much emotion dictates their financial decisions. They make choices based on fear, insecurity, impatience, frustration, or the desire for approval. They enter opportunities impulsively and exit them out of panic. They compare themselves to others, worry about scarcity, react to market noise, and sabotage their progress because their emotions are louder than their vision. Emotional chaos prevents the mind from seeing possibility, and when possibility becomes invisible, opportunity disappears. Billionaires operate differently. They cultivate clarity. They practice emotional detachment. They train their minds to respond instead of react. They prioritize internal stability over external noise. Consider how markets behave. During economic downturns, the average person panics, sells their assets, retreats into scarcity, and closes themselves off from possibility. But billionaires see downturns as periods of opportunity. They stay calm during storms, knowing that volatility is temporary, but value is timeless. They understand that emotional reactivity destroys wealth, while emotional discipline multiplies it. Warren Buffett famously tells investors to be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. This advice is not about outsmarting the market. It is about out-emotioning it. It is about staying grounded when the world is shaking. Emotional discipline also shows up in how billionaires handle failure. Most people treat failure as a signal to stop, a sign that they are not capable, or a threat to their identity. But billionaires treat failure as feedback. They analyze it. They learn from it. They adapt quickly. They don't spiral emotionally because they don't tie their self-worth to temporary outcomes. They separate the event from the identity. When something collapses, they don't collapse with it. They adjust. They iterate. They evolve. This emotional agility allows them to keep moving forward while others freeze. Elon Musk provides a striking example of this mindset. During the lowest point of Tesla and SpaceX, when both companies were on the brink of bankruptcy, when every headline declared him a failure, when critics attacked him relentlessly, Musk did not give in to emotional paralysis. He stayed committed to the mission. He made decisions from clarity, not desperation. He invested the last of his personal money to keep the vision alive. That level of emotional resilience is not common, but it is exactly why he built companies that reshaped entire industries. Without emotional discipline, Tesla and SpaceX would have died. With it, they grew into multi-billion-dollar forces. Steve Jobs demonstrated emotional discipline in a different way. After being fired from Apple, a company he built, he could have collapsed emotionally and disappeared from the industry. But instead, he channeled the emotional pain into new creation. He built Next and Pixar, both of which became monumental successes. And when he returned to Apple, he did so with even greater clarity, leading the company into one of the most extraordinary corporate transformations of all time. Jobs did not let emotional hurt dictate his decisions. He transformed the hurt into focus. That is emotional mastery in action. Billionaires also manage emotional overload by designing their environments intentionally. They surround themselves with people who bring perspective, not panic. They protect their time from chaos. They engage in routines that stabilize their mental state. Some meditate, some exercise, some reflect deeply through journaling, some seek mentors, some disconnect from noise and immerse themselves in learning. These practices create mental space to think, to feel, to evaluate, to observe. Without this space, clarity dies. And without clarity, wealth cannot grow. Another powerful aspect of billionaire emotional discipline is patience. Most people crumble under the weight of waiting. They need results now. They need validation now. They need certainty now. But billionaires understand the timeline of success is not linear. They know that there are seasons of planting, seasons of watering, and seasons of harvest. They remain calm through the slow phases because they are emotionally anchored in the long-term vision. Their decisions come from where they are going, not from where they currently stand. This emotional patience is a multiplier of wealth. It prevents premature quitting and premature selling, the two behaviors that quietly destroy financial potential. Emotional discipline also plays a key role in self-leadership. Billionaires hold themselves accountable with a level of integrity that the average person rarely develops. They do not allow temporary feelings to dictate permanent decisions. They do not let fear stop them from taking action. They do not allow insecurity to shrink their dreams. They do not allow jealousy to poison their focus. They manage their internal state as seriously as they manage their business metrics. And because of this internal mastery, their external results accelerate. Perhaps the most fascinating dimension of billionaire emotional discipline is their ability to make decisions from a place of expansion rather than contraction. Contraction energy comes from fear, scarcity, doubt, and limitation. Expansion energy comes from possibility, trust, clarity, and confidence. Billionaires consistently choose expansion. They evaluate opportunities through the lens of potential, not through the lens of fear. They imagine what is possible instead of obsessing over what could go wrong. This mental posture creates a magnetic pull toward innovation, creativity, and opportunity. You can sense this in the way they speak. Billionaires use language that reflects vision rather than victimhood. They talk about what they are building, not what they fear. They talk about possibility, not limitation. They speak from grounded confidence, not emotional turbulence. Their words reveal the internal landscape from which they operate, a landscape of emotional clarity, psychological strength, and mental expansion. When you begin cultivating this emotional discipline in your own life, everything changes. Decisions become easier, opportunities become clearer, fear becomes quieter. You begin acting with intention rather than impulse. You stop sabotaging your own progress. You stop reacting to life and start responding to it. And from that grounded place, your capacity for wealth expands, not simply because you are doing more, but because you have become someone capable of more. Emotional discipline is the foundation beneath every billionaire fortune. Without it, strategy collapses, opportunity fades, and wealth stagnates. With it, everything accelerates: creativity, clarity, confidence, resilience, and ultimately, prosperity. When you master your inner world, your outer world begins to rise in ways that feel inevitable, aligned, and unstoppable. This is the emotional blueprint behind their success. And once you integrate it, you step into the same psychological field where exponential wealth becomes not just possible, but natural. Topic 8. They understand the power of networks and position themselves at the center of influence. If money flows like energy, then networks are the rivers that carry it. Billionaires understand this at a level that transcends traditional business thinking. They know that no matter how intelligent, skilled, or hardworking one person is, their impact will always be limited if they remain isolated. Wealth does not grow in isolation. It grows in connection. It grows in proximity to opportunity, in proximity to innovation, in proximity to people who elevate your thinking, expand your access, challenge your limits, and open doors you didn't even know existed. Billionaires don't just build businesses, they build ecosystems. They don't just build wealth, they build networks that make wealth inevitable. Most people underestimate how deeply their environment shapes their destiny. They surround themselves with people who think like them, behave like them, and repeat the same limited beliefs. They engage in conversations rooted in fear, doubt, survival, gossip, or smallness. Over time, these voices create an invisible cage that restricts what they believe is possible. Billionaires do the opposite. They intentionally shape their environment. They choose to surround themselves with thinkers, creators, visionaries, innovators, strategists, and high-capacity individuals whose ideas, energy, and ambition elevate the entire room. They don't wait to stumble into these networks. They actively build them. Think about the origins of Silicon Valley. It did not become a global innovation hub by accident. It became a billionaire factory because brilliant minds were clustered in proximity to each other, sharing ideas, collaborating, competing, cross-pollinating insights, and pushing each other beyond their limits. Companies like Apple, Google, Facebook, Netflix, Tesla, and countless others were born from networks of people who believed in possibility, who were not afraid to challenge the status quo, who fed off each other's creativity. The environment amplified their brilliance. Proximity accelerated their success. Billionaires understand this deeply, which is why they place themselves in rooms where powerful conversations happen. Look at Mark Zuckerberg. Facebook wasn't just a product of technical skill. It was a product of connections. Zuckerberg's access to mentors, investors, engineers, advisors, and early adopters allowed the platform to scale far faster than any single person could have achieved alone. He didn't just build a social network, he leveraged networks of influence that propelled Facebook into global dominance. The idea was important, but the connections magnified it. The same is true for someone like Richard Branson. His empire spans dozens of industries, not because he personally mastered each one, but because he built relationships with people who had expertise, passion, and insight in those fields. Branson's network is his engine. It brings him opportunities, partnerships, access, resources, and collaborations that multiply his influence. His genius is not only in entrepreneurship, but in connection, turning relationships into bridges toward expansion. Billionaires don't chase contacts, they cultivate relationships. They don't network superficially, they connect meaningfully. They understand that every conversation has the potential to open a door, shift a perspective, reveal a hidden opportunity, or create a life-changing partnership. They operate with a mindset of curiosity. Who is this person? What do they know? What can I learn? How can I contribute to them? This approach naturally builds trust, and trust becomes the currency of influence. And influence is more valuable than money because influence creates opportunities that money alone cannot buy. A billionaire can pick up the phone and access resources instantly because they've spent years cultivating trust. They can solve problems quickly because the right people want to help them. They can move into new industries because they already know the people who run them. Their network becomes a multiplier of wealth, an accelerator of ideas, a shield against obstacles, and a magnet for opportunity. But the most important part of this mindset is how billionaires position themselves. They don't just join networks, they rise to the center of them. They become valuable. They become contributors. They become people worth knowing. And they do this by offering insight, support, vision, and solutions rather than taking from others. Billionaires understand that value attracts value. When you become someone who can open doors for others, doors will open for you effortlessly. This is where the average person often gets stuck. They approach networking with a mindset of lack. They ask, "What can I get?" instead of, "What can I give?" They try to collect contacts rather than build relationships. They focus on being impressive instead of being useful. But billionaires understand that the foundation of powerful networks is contribution. The more valuable you are to others, the more others will want you in their world. And the more others want you in their world, the faster your wealth expands. Even in the digital era, networks shape destinies. Look at creators, entrepreneurs, and innovators who rise rapidly on platforms like YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram. The ones who grow fastest are those who collaborate, cross-promote, share audiences, and build community. The algorithm responds to networks just as markets do. Visibility is amplified when creators link their audiences. Billionaires simply apply this truth on a global scale. But there is a deeper dimension. Billionaires understand the power of being known, not in a superficial, fame-oriented way, but in a strategic, influential way. When people know your values, your vision, your abilities, and your capacity to execute, they think of you when opportunities arise. They refer you. They involve you. They trust you. This type of influence cannot be bought. It must be built. And once it is built, wealth grows through it naturally. Networking at its highest level is not about external connection. It is about internal alignment. When you raise your standards, your circle changes. When you grow emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually, your relationships evolve. When you become more disciplined, more intentional, more visionary, you begin attracting people who operate at that level. Your network becomes a reflection of your mindset. Billionaires built their networks not just through strategy, but through identity. They became people who belonged in rooms of power, and this is where the transformation begins for you. When you start to understand that your next level of wealth will come from people, conversations, environments, and rooms you have not yet entered, something shifts inside you. You realize that isolation is the enemy of expansion. You begin to value relationships more deeply. You begin to seek out mentors, collaborators, communities, and friends who elevate you. You begin to think like someone who belongs in rooms of possibility. When you shift your environment, you shift your destiny. And billionaires know this better than anyone. They place themselves where opportunity lives. They sit at tables where ideas grow. They build networks that expand their vision. And because they do, their wealth accelerates faster than the rest of the world can comprehend. Topic 9. They play the long game with an almost unbreakable vision. If there is one trait that consistently distinguishes billionaires from everyone else, it is their unwavering commitment to the long game. Their vision stretches far beyond the immediacy of today, tomorrow, or even next year. They think in decades, not days. They plan for futures other people cannot yet imagine. They pursue goals that require time, patience, resilience, and an almost spiritual level of belief. And while most people look for quick wins and fast results, billionaires invest their energy into ideas that may take years or even a lifetime to manifest. It is this long-term orientation, this unbreakable vision, that accelerates their wealth while the rest of the world is distracted by short-term gratification. Most people operate with a short vision because they have been conditioned by urgency. Everything around them promotes the idea that results must be immediate. Social media shows overnight success. The world values shortcuts. The culture emphasizes speed over depth. This mindset destroys long-term thinking. It creates impatience, frustration, and impulsive decisions. It leads people to abandon opportunities the moment they become difficult or uncertain. And because they abandon them prematurely, they never experience the compounding effects that only time can unlock. Billionaires understand that vision is not simply an idea. It is an anchor. It holds them steady through turbulence. It keeps them focused through uncertainty. It strengthens them through setbacks. When Elon Musk speaks about colonizing Mars, he's not referring to a short-term business plan. He's referring to a vision that may unfold long after he is gone. Yet he pursues it with the same vigor, clarity, and commitment as if it were something he could complete tomorrow. The power lies not in the timeline, but in the purpose. A powerful vision does not need immediate proof to be real. It becomes real because the person holding it refuses to let it die. Jeff Bezos built Amazon on a philosophy of long-term vision. For years, Amazon was not profitable. Investors complained. Competitors mocked the company. Analysts predicted failure. But Bezos held a vision so large that the temporary losses did not faze him. He understood that the early years were about building infrastructure, systems, customer trust, market dominance, and technological advantage. He wasn't trying to win immediately. He was trying to win inevitably. His famous quote, "We are willing to be misunderstood for long periods of time," reflects the strength of his long game. Amazon succeeded not because it moved fast, but because it moved consistently and relentlessly in alignment with a long-term vision. Steve Jobs did the same when he returned to Apple. He wasn't trying to save the company by patching problems. He was trying to rebuild an ecosystem. He envisioned a world where technology felt like an extension of human creativity. He saw devices that didn't yet exist, markets that weren't yet formed, and products that people didn't yet know they needed. That vision guided every decision he made. His long game became Apple's identity. And even after his death, that vision continues to shape the company's trajectory. Vision outlives its creator when it's strong enough. The long game requires discipline, deep, unwavering discipline. It requires the ability to say no to short-term rewards in exchange for massive long-term outcomes. It requires resilience to survive the slow phases, the invisible phases, the phases where nothing seems to be happening on the outside while everything is forming on the inside. Most people give up during these quiet seasons. Billionaires endure them. They understand that greatness grows underground before it grows outward. They trust the process even when the world sees nothing. Another aspect of long-term vision is emotional endurance. To hold a vision that spans years or decades, you must have the emotional fortitude to confront rejection, confusion, failure, uncertainty, criticism, slow progress, and periods where the only evidence you have is your belief. Billionaires don't rely on external validation. Their validation comes from alignment with their purpose. They don't need applause. They don't need immediate success. They don't need people to understand them. They only need to stay committed to the direction they know is right. This emotional endurance is also connected to identity. Billionaires see themselves as builders, creators, visionaries, not as people chasing money or approval. Their identity is rooted in expansion, expression, and contribution. And because their identity is aligned with their vision, the vision becomes inseparable from who they are. This creates a level of persistence that is almost impossible to break. Even when everything collapses around them, the vision inside them remains intact, guiding them toward the next step. Long-term vision also shapes how billionaires handle decisions. They don't make choices based on short-term discomfort or immediate difficulty. They make choices based on where they want to be decades from now. They optimize for future impact, not present ease. They build systems that may take years to refine. They plant seeds they may not be alive to harvest. They are willing to endure short-term losses for long-term positioning. They understand that the world rewards those who build foundational value, not those who seek instant gratification. Think about the founders of Google. Larry Page and Sergey Brin did not create a search engine for immediate profit. They created it because they saw a future where access to information would shape human progress. Their long game was rooted in purpose. It was not driven by money, although money followed. It was driven by a belief that the world needed something better than what existed. That type of vision is rare, and when nurtured over time, it becomes unstoppable. Billionaires also surround themselves with people who support the long game. They seek advisors who think in decades, not days. They build teams who understand that greatness requires patience. They choose environments where long-term thinking is celebrated, not criticized. They protect their vision from the noise of short-term thinkers who cannot comprehend what they're building. They avoid the trap of reacting to every fluctuation, distraction, or criticism. They stay anchored to the larger picture. One of the most powerful truths about long-term vision is that it compounds. Just like money compounds, belief compounds, effort compounds, discipline compounds, and alignment compounds. Every day that a person holds a powerful vision, that vision gains momentum. It becomes more detailed, more refined, more magnetic. It begins attracting opportunities. It begins influencing decisions. It becomes a gravitational field that shapes a person's life. Billionaires don't succeed because their visions are perfect. They succeed because their visions are persistent. When you begin adopting this mindset, your life transforms. You stop rushing. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop panicking when things take time. You stop abandoning your dreams when the first obstacle appears. You begin to trust the process. You begin to build with intention. You begin to focus on the foundational work that creates long-term payoff. And you stop comparing your journey to people who are chasing short-term success. The long game is not glamorous. It is not immediate. It is not loud, but it is powerful. It is the quiet force behind every empire, invention, breakthrough, and fortune. Billionaires rise because they refuse to surrender their vision, no matter how long it takes. And when you begin to operate from this same depth of commitment, your dreams stop being fantasies and start becoming inevitabilities. Topic 10. The hidden truth. Wealth expands when you transform into the person capable of holding it. In the end, when you strip away all the strategies, all the systems, all the networks, all the leverage, all the risk psychology, all the long-term vision, and all the exponential thinking, you arrive at the single, unshakable truth that sits at the core of every billionaire's journey. Wealth accelerates for those who become the kind of person who can hold wealth. Not earn it temporarily, not stumble into it, not manifest it once and lose it, but hold it, sustain it, expand it, protect it, multiply it, integrate it into their identity without collapsing under its weight or sabotaging their own potential. The real reason billionaires get richer faster is not because they found a secret loophole in the economy or because they possess supernatural abilities. It's because they evolved into individuals whose mindset, emotional foundation, psychological patterns, decision-making processes, and internal beliefs are compatible with exponential growth. This is the truth few people want to confront. Wealth is not just a financial condition, it is a psychological capacity. Money flows to those who can manage uncertainty, delay gratification, withstand pressure, make clear decisions, think long-term, take calculated risks, collaborate with brilliance, reinvest strategically, and stay grounded through massive expansion. Wealth exposes who you are. It magnifies your strengths and your weaknesses. It amplifies your clarity or your confusion. It multiplies your discipline or your chaos. Billionaires expand faster because they have mastered the inner architecture that supports financial expansion. Without this architecture, wealth collapses as quickly as it rises. This is why lottery winners go bankrupt while billionaires grow richer. The difference is not opportunity, it is identity. One receives money without transforming into the person who can manage it. The other transforms continuously and until their internal world can sustain larger and larger levels of abundance. Your external wealth is always a direct reflection of your internal capacity. And this is where the true transformation begins. Not in strategy, not in business models, not in investments, but in the invisible realm of self-mastery. Billionaires consistently upgrade their internal software. They challenge their beliefs. They rewire their relationship with failure. They expand their tolerance for uncertainty. They detach from ego. They refine their emotional discipline. They learn to think beyond the moment. They develop patience that most people could not endure. They strengthen their resilience until setbacks no longer define them. They operate from vision, not from fear. They make decisions from clarity, not chaos. They invest with purpose, not impulse. This inner transformation is what makes their outer expansion possible. People love to analyze the external moves billionaires make, what they invested in, what businesses they built, what industries they entered. But few pay attention to the internal moves, the mindset shifts, the emotional breakthroughs, the psychological restructuring. And yet, these internal shifts are the foundation. Without them, nothing external would sustain itself. What most people call luck is simply alignment. What most people call advantage is simply awareness. What most people call privilege is simply preparation meeting opportunity. The truth is that exponential wealth is the byproduct of exponential personal growth. It requires you to think differently, feel differently, act differently, and respond differently to life. Billionaires are not defined by what they have. They are defined by who they became in the process of building what they have. Their wealth is a reflection of their evolution. Every breakthrough they experienced externally was preceded by a breakthrough internally. They didn't just build companies, they built themselves. They didn't just accumulate assets, they accumulated wisdom. They didn't just increase their income, they increased their capacity to hold abundance without fear, without sabotage, without shrinking, without apology. And now, the spotlight turns to you, because everything we've explored throughout this video leads to one pivotal realization. Your wealth will not expand until you expand. You cannot think like the masses and expect extraordinary results. You cannot fear risk and expect exponential return. You cannot cling to comfort and expect transformative growth. You cannot operate from scarcity and expect abundance to flow. The internal world must shift before the external world can reflect that shift. Billionaires get richer faster because they evolve faster. They grow into bigger versions of themselves repeatedly, relentlessly, consistently, and wealth flows into that expansion naturally. This is not about copying their lifestyles. It is not about worshiping their bank accounts. It is about adopting the principles, the psychology, the emotional strength, and the strategic clarity that make their results possible. You are not separated from extraordinary wealth by intelligence or talent or connections. You are separated by mindset, by belief, by emotional resilience, by your relationship with vision, fear, risk, and opportunity. When you begin shifting these internal patterns, the external world will reorganize itself around you. This conclusion is not the end of a story. It is the beginning of a new one. The moment you understand that abundance is not something you chase, it is something you align with. Wealth is not something you earn once. It is something you grow into. Prosperity is not something outside of you. It is something inside you waiting to be activated. Every billionaire has walked this path of inner expansion, and now you stand at the same threshold. The question is no longer whether wealth is possible for you. The question is, will you become the person capable of holding the level of wealth you desire? Because when you do, when you evolve into that version of yourself, money will not trickle into your life. It will accelerate. Opportunities will not appear occasionally. They will appear constantly. Growth will not feel forced. It will feel inevitable. That is the hidden truth behind billionaire wealth. And now it belongs to you. If this message awakened something inside you, then make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with someone who needs this awakening, and leave a comment telling me which insight shifted your perspective the most. Your journey toward exponential success begins now. Don't walk it alone.